When I was younger, I was excited to leave, and now all I want to do is be back home.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Fame built him a fortress, but loneliness turned it into a tomb. Behind the gates of Jason Momoa's mansion, investigators found a house frozen in time. Half-empty rooms, scattered journals, and chalked words that read, "I am not him." For years, Momoa was the face of strength, the warrior, the king, the myth. But what if the roles he played didn't just make him famous? What if they consumed him? They say he left it all behind, a $40 million empire traded for a van parked in silence facing the same house that made him famous. What drove Hollywood's strongest man to walk away from everything he built? What they found inside those walls may finally explain why Jason Momoa vanished from his own story. And it's more heartbreaking than anyone expected. Fame built him a fortress, but loneliness turned it into a tomb. Behind the gates of Jason Momoa's mansion, investigators found a house frozen in time. Half-empty rooms, scattered journals, and chalked words that read, "I am not him." The world saw him as Aquaman, the unbreakable hero, but behind that image was someone drowning in the roles he played. When Jason vanished from his own home, rumors spread that he had escaped fame. But what they found inside told a different story, one about guilt, exhaustion, and a man trying to erase the legend he created. This is what they discovered, and why he never went back. For years, Jason Momoa looked untouchable, an image carved in bronze and myth. The world saw the tattoos, the laughter, the ocean eyes, and believed he had mastered life itself. But by 2023, that illusion began to splinter. Neighbors noticed something strange. The lights inside his California mansion stayed off for weeks. A black Sprinter van appeared near the gate, its curtains drawn, its engine sometimes idling through the night. At first, people assumed it was a movie stunt, a man reconnecting with nature. But those who knew him said it wasn't freedom, it was exile. Momoa wasn't filming. He was hiding. He'd stopped taking calls, skipped public appearances, and canceled interviews without warning.
The housekeeper quit after hearing chanting inside when no one was home. When investigators were finally called to check the property, what they found wasn't vandalism or decay. It was something far more personal. A home turned into a map of a man's mind, slowly unraveling itself. Long before the mansion in the spotlight, Jason Momoa was already split between two coasts of himself. His father, a Hawaiian artist, painted with salt in his veins. His mother, a photographer from Iowa, captured winters that never ended. When they separated, the baby followed his mother inland, thousands of miles from the ocean his blood remembered. In Iowa's classrooms, he was the boy who didn't fit. Skin too dark, hair too long, sandals in the snow. When he visited Hawaii, locals called him Haole, outsider. Each trip home reminded him he belonged nowhere. So he learned early how to build armor, humor, confidence, muscles. That split never healed. It only grew quiet. Decades later, inside that empty mansion, investigators would see the same fracture on its walls, half filled with coral, half bare concrete. A house divided, like its owner. And somewhere between those worlds, Jason Momoa started to disappear again. At 19, Jason arrived in Hawaii with salt in his lungs and nothing in his pockets. A fashion scout spotted him in a surf shop, mistook quiet for confidence and pulled him into modeling. Within months, the cameras loved him, but the lens also built the first mask. On Baywatch Hawaii, he played the lifeguard everyone wanted to be, yet he hated every episode. Fame came too fast, too empty. When the show ended, the applause stopped overnight. He was 23, broke, and invisible again. That's when the hunger began, to prove he was more than a body. Each rejection thickened his armor. He learned that charm could hide pain, and that strength could silence fear. Years later, investigators would find headshots from that era tucked in drawers of the mansion, faces smiling that no longer looked like him. The illusion had started long before Hollywood crowned him its king. When the lights went out, bills replaced scripts. Momoa poured concrete by day and guarded clubs by night, a star without a sky. Then came Stargate Atlantis. He walked into the audition with dreadlocks and fire in his eyes. The producers saw danger. He saw survival. On set, he bled for every scene, refused doubles, cracked ribs, and smiled through it. Crew members whispered he didn't know when to stop. But pain was the only language he trusted. It made him real. That obsession followed him home. Friends noticed the workouts turned violent, the nights longer, the laughter hollow. When the role ended, he was proud and empty all at once. The fighting didn't stop, it just moved inward. Years later, that same fury would echo inside the mansion's gym. Weights left mid-lift, mirrors spiderwebbed, a note taped to the wall. Control is an illusion. The war had only changed rooms.
Game of Thrones changed everything. And nothing. His audition, A Thunderous Haka, won him the part of Khal Drogo, a warlord who spoke with violence instead of words. The world cheered. Jason drowned in him. Between takes, he couldn't shake the rage, the command, the weight of eyes that saw only power. Then came the joke, the one about raping beautiful women. The crowd laughed. The internet didn't. Years later, the line returned like a curse, and so did shame. Therapy followed. For the first time, he faced the mirror without armor. But healing never arrives quietly. The more he tried to separate from his characters, the more they followed him home. By the time Aquaman crowned him global hero, he was already retreating. The myth had won. In interviews, he smiled. Off camera, he vanished. Every photo looked staged, every word rehearsed. The man who once surfed storms now feared his own reflection. To outsiders, his hilltop mansion was proof of victory. Glass walls, infinity pools, and the ocean miles below. But inside, silence ruled. In 2023, neighbors saw the van arrive. It never left. A luxury Sprinter with a shower, stove, and single mattress parked by the gate. He slept there even when the mansion stood empty behind him. Some thought it was freedom. Others called it exile. Delivery drivers left boxes that were never opened. The mailbox overflowed with letters marked return to sender. At night, faint chanting drifted down the drive, Hawaiian words no one understood. Then one evening, the lights inside flickered for the first time in months and went dark again. That was when the city issued an inspection order. What investigators walked into would erase the last trace of Hollywood shine and reveal the mind of a man trying to unwrite his own name. The front door opened to air thick with salt and dust. Surfboards lined the foyer like tombstones. In the living room, uncashed charity checks lay beside unopened fan mail. Upstairs, mirrors were turned to the wall. In chalk, across the master bedroom, words looped endlessly, "I am not him." Another message read, "The ocean remembers everything." One room was covered in sand, real sand, spread in careful circles around a single candle.
Investigators found sketches of coral, photographs of his children, and a trident replica rusting in a corner. Nothing was destroyed, yet nothing felt alive. It wasn't decay, it was confession. Every object seemed to represent a role, a life, a version of himself abandoned mid-scene. The mansion wasn't haunted by ghosts, it was haunted by identity. And somewhere between the chalk and the silence, Jason Momoa had left a message only the sea could read. Reporters called it burnout, friends called it healing, but the truth sat somewhere in between. Momoa's life had become an echo chamber of his own mythology: warrior, king, savior, rebel. Each role demanded a piece of him until there was nothing left but performance. When he walked away, the world thought he'd lost everything. In reality, he was stripping the armor that fame welded to his skin. He began funding ocean projects, speaking about ancestral land, replacing plastic with metal bottles, trying to reconcile success with purpose. Yet the mansion remained untouched, frozen in the moment he left. To some, it's a monument of guilt. To others, a sanctuary. Those who've entered say the air hums at night, as if the sea itself is breathing through the walls. Whether myth or memory, one thing is clear: Jason Momoa didn't abandon the house, he turned it into his mirror. Today, the gates still stand locked, vines curling through steel. The van appears sometimes at dusk, headlights aimed toward the house, but never moving closer. Locals swear they've seen him step out barefoot, stare at the windows, then disappear into the dark. Inside, the chalk words remain untouched, fading but not forgotten. I am not him. Perhaps that was never a warning, but a prayer. A reminder that the strongest men can still drown in the image the world builds for them. Fame gave him everything, then asked for himself in return. The mansion holds what's left: art, silence, and the question no one can answer. Maybe he'll return one day. Maybe he already has. They say on quiet nights, if you stand by the gate, you can hear it. Waves crashing somewhere deep inside the walls. And that's when you realize he never truly left.